You know exactly how this specific, highly confusing cycle begins. You finally meet someone who is genuinely kind, emotionally available, and entirely consistent. They text you back immediately, they remember the small details, and they actually treat you well. But instead of feeling happy, a heavy, suffocating weight begins to crush your chest. You suddenly feel trapped, irritated, and desperately claustrophobic. You start focusing on their tiny, completely insignificant flaws just to build a case against them. You convince yourself that they are too boring, too needy, or simply not the right fit. So you slowly pull away, ghost them, and completely sabotage the connection. But the exact moment they are gone, you find yourself intensely craving the attention of someone who is emotionally unavailable. You chase people who leave you on read, treat you like an option, and trigger your deepest insecurities. Society has a very harsh, incredibly judgmental diagnosis for this specific repeating pattern. They tell you that you are just afraid of commitment, or that you inherently thrive on toxic drama. They say you enjoy the thrill of the chase and that you fundamentally do not want to be happy. And after hearing that narrative enough times, you slowly begin to internalize that heavy, toxic shame. You look at your graveyard of healthy relationships and genuinely start to hate yourself for being so broken. You wonder if you are permanently damaged and completely incapable of accepting real love. But today, I want to offer you a completely different, heavily researched biological diagnosis. You are not addicted to drama, you are not broken, and you do not inherently fear commitment. You are suffering from a documented neurological phenomenon directly tied to your autonomic nervous system. To understand why your brain actively rejects safe people, we have to look closely at your biological baseline. As we have discussed in our previous conversations, your brain is a highly complex prediction machine. Its primary job is not to make you happy. Its primary job is to keep you alive by predicting your environment. To do this, it builds a permanent internal map of what human connection is actually supposed to feel like. For many of us, that map was drawn during early childhood or during highly toxic past relationships. In those environments, love was never safe, predictable, or completely guaranteed. Love meant walking on eggshells, constantly guessing their mood, and working incredibly hard for tiny breadcrumbs of affection. Your nervous system learned that human connection is fundamentally intertwined with high levels of cortisol and adrenaline. Your brain literally wired the biological feeling of anxiety directly to the biological feeling of love. So your internal prediction machine set a very specific, highly chaotic baseline for intimacy. It expects a relationship to constantly feel like a high-stakes, exhausting roller coaster ride. This is exactly why you are so powerfully, magnetically drawn to emotionally unavailable people. When someone is inconsistent, your brain experiences the exact familiar chaos it was perfectly programmed to expect. The anxiety they cause you perfectly matches your internal baseline, so your brain chemically registers it as love. But when an emotionally healthy, incredibly consistent person enters your life, a biological glitch immediately occurs. They do not trigger your cortisol, they do not make you panic, and they do not make you chase them. Because there is absolutely no anxiety, your brain registers a massive, terrifying prediction error. The external reality of their calm, healthy love does not match your internal baseline of chaotic survival. Your amygdala, the fear center of your brain, instantly lights up and sounds a massive alarm. It perceives this unfamiliar calmness not as a beautiful sanctuary, but as a severe threat to your survival. It assumes that because you are not actively fighting for the connection, something must be terribly wrong. Your brain floods your body with a desperate, overwhelming urge to run away and escape the perceived danger. That sudden feeling of suffocation, that sudden loss of attraction, is not a sign that they are the wrong person. It is just your highly dysregulated nervous system desperately trying to return to the familiar chaos it understands. You are basically experiencing severe chemical withdrawal from the unpredictable dopamine spikes of toxic relationships. A healthy person feels incredibly boring to a nervous system that is deeply addicted to surviving trauma. You are not pushing them away because you do not want to be loved or completely understood. You are pushing them away because your biology literally cannot recognize love unless it is actively hurting you. But living your life at the mercy of this broken radar is a completely exhausting, deeply lonely experience. It forces you to endlessly cycle through people who drain your soul while abandoning the people who actually want to heal it. So how do we actually bypass this broken alarm system and trick your brain into accepting safety? We cannot rely on forcing yourself to stay in relationships using pure, exhausting willpower. Instead, we have to use a neurological workaround called somatic recalibration. Right now, your brain firmly believes that consistency equals danger and chaos equals safety. We need to physically and emotionally rewrite that deeply ingrained, entirely backwards biological code. First, you must completely stop trusting your initial, highly reactive feelings when you meet someone new. When you feel that sudden, overwhelming urge to run away from a kind person, you are going to pause. You must verbally acknowledge out loud that your sudden loss of interest is a trauma response, not the absolute truth. You must explicitly tell your brain that the boredom you feel is actually just the unfamiliar feeling of peace. This sounds incredibly simple, but labeling the emotion strips it of its massive, terrifying power over your actions. It moves the processing out of your highly reactive amygdala and directly into your logical prefrontal cortex. Second, you need to completely redefine your biological expectation of early romance. We have been conditioned to believe that true love feels like a massive, explosive spark of immediate obsession. But for a dysregulated nervous system, that massive spark is usually just the severe activation of your attachment wounds. You must actively seek out the connections that feel like a slow, quiet, incredibly gentle simmer. You are deliberately trading the massive toxic dopamine spikes for the quiet, sustained release of genuine oxytocin. To do this, you use a technique called the 24-hour pause protocol. When the kind person does something completely normal and your brain instantly tells you to break up with them, you wait. You promise yourself that you will not make any permanent relationship decisions while your nervous system is actively panicking. You force yourself to sit in the intense discomfort of being treated well for just 24 hours. You allow the wave of false anxiety to peak, break, and completely wash away without acting on it. By refusing to run away, you are actively proving to your subconscious that this safe environment is not a trap. You are doing highly necessary reps in the cognitive gym, slowly stretching your capacity to receive healthy love. And this is where the actual biological magic of your changing nervous system finally happens. Over time, your brain begins to gather real, irrefutable data that consistency does not result in abandonment or pain. It slowly realizes that it no longer needs to keep the heavy, exhausting survival shields raised at all times. The prediction machine slowly lowers the baseline, effectively decoupling the feeling of love from the feeling of panic. The absolute hardest part of this process is grieving the massive, cinematic highs of your past toxic relationships. You have to actively mourn the intoxicating, addictive rush of finally getting a breadcrumb from someone who starved you. But that heavy, familiar rush actually kept you entirely trapped in a cycle of profound emotional malnutrition. You must completely stop treating peace like it is a punishment and start treating it like the cure. Your brain is just an incredibly powerful survival engine running a faulty, completely outdated map of the world. It is fiercely trying to protect you from the intense vulnerability of finally being truly seen and accepted. When you deeply understand this truth, the heavy shame of your past self-sabotage naturally begins to dissolve. You finally stop fighting a brutal, utterly unwinnable war against your own deeply conditioned biology. The next time you feel the sudden urge to run away from a safe harbor, just take a deep breath. Acknowledge the heavy, confusing alarm bells that your dysregulated mind is violently ringing in your ears. Do not try to forcefully shove the anxiety down, and do not hate yourself for feeling terrified of being loved. Set your 24-hour pause, externalize the threat, and hand the heavy burden of deciding completely over to time. Then, give yourself radical permission to sit quietly in the incredibly strange, highly uncomfortable feeling of total safety. Trade the massive, overwhelming chaos of the storm for the profound, beautiful clarity of the quiet shore. Let that quiet space slowly unfreeze your paralyzed system and gently bring your heart back to baseline. You do not need to perfectly perform emotional health for a world that originally broke your trust. You just need to learn how to gently navigate the beautiful, highly sensitive machinery of your own healing mind. Start incredibly small today. Forgive yourself entirely for running away in the past, and I will see you in the next one.